Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open on a rescue team tracking two missing lumberjacks through a forest in Maine. The three men nearly follow one of their zealous sniffer pooches over a cliff but luckily catch him on a leash. While pulling him up, however, the line snaps, so two of the men rappel down into the darkness to retrieve him. The third begins to hear screaming, so he wisely descends to investigate and somehow just falls off his rope. He lands right beside his dead co-workers before being mauled to death by a giant mutant grizzly bear called Katahdin. Meanwhile, in the big city, Dr. Robert Verne goes around treating sick tenants who live with vermin because the landlord's a fat rat himself. He doesn't feel like he's making any difference, so Joe Blow from Never See Again offers him a 2-week working holiday in Maine. The Environmental Protection Agency is trying to settle a dispute between the logging company and the native tribe who call themselves the Opis. Verne isn't a lawyer, but the EPA seems to think doctors can solve everything, I guess, so here's your unqualified protagonist. He travels by plane with his wife Maggie, who hasn't told her husband that she's pregnant because he's always off playing God. Translation: he's a busy doctor, and they touch down in Hicksville, USA, just outside of Mutant Central. They cross paths with Travis and his two children, who were shown a few times hiking throughout the movie, but there's never a need for them to look that dirty. The big question is answered when the only surviving member of the search party is shown being airlifted back to safety like a teabag. Since he's a dog, he isn't able to talk, so the couple's host Isely blames the Indians for the attack because why not? He says that the Opis blame the vengeful spirit of the forest that was awakened by the destruction of the trees. Mind you, this is coming from the owner of the paper mill, who's the one chopping all the trees down and gives them a lift to their cabin out past the mill. However, upon entering a forest track, their way's blocked by a party of Opis whose leader John refuses to let them pass. Isely pleads with his wife Ramona, but she's just as stubborn, so he sends out the chainsaw-wielding Kelso to take down the trees. When John tries to stop him with an axe, a fight breaks out and it gets pretty intense, with these two trying to take each other's heads off. Somehow the lumberjack defeats the native warrior, but with the saw at his throat he still refuses to unlock the chain. Since Ramona doesn't want to see her husband reduced to firewood, she relents and allows the so-called good guys to pass. The visitors then have to ditch the cars and just hope that the Opis don't steal them while they take some boats the rest of the way. It's just a crappy little cabin on the water, and while Maggie's playing her cello that she dragged all the way out here, Verne takes the boat out fishing. He catches a decent-sized salmon when its unusually larger cousin devours an entire duck beside him, and I bet he wishes he caught that one. That night Maggie cooks up his catch while Verne talks about the monster fish and what a trophy that thing would make. When hearing a noise at the door, the doctor finds a feral raccoon that somehow weighs enough to tackle him off his feet. This thing goes crazy like they owe it money, so Verne uses the infamous rowing spatula to shovel the trash panda into the fireplace. In the morning he sends a tissue sample to be tested for rabies when being approached by John and Ramona. They claim that Verne only thinks they're violent because of the stories, but we literally just watched you in a chainsaw fight. John says that Opie lives are tied directly to the forest, and as it's destroyed, they're experiencing stillbirths and mental illness. Intrigued, Verne decides to take Maggie with him and go with the pair to the nearby campsite of Ramona's grandfather. Shocked at the available space for a single person, Verne feels no sympathy for Hector, as he just experienced 10 people living in a tiny apartment. John says those people fought too late for their home and doesn't intend for his own to go out the same way. Hector says that Katahdin bears the mark of every animal that God created, but I think Grandpa's just trying to lay out the puns. They bring Verne down by a pond where John nets a monster of a tadpole and is like, "Does that crap look normal to you?" Realizing that it's attached to the greater lake of the nearby paper mill, Verne and Maggie take a tour to search for the cause of this. Isely says that any chemicals used in the processing never leaves the plant and lets Verne test the water quality to prove his innocence. There's a weird threat by Isely about not letting Verne use paper to write his report, but dude, the stuff's everywhere. As they leave without finding anything incriminating, Verne asks what's the only liquid in the world that isn't wet. He says this because he wanted to demonstrate his big medical brain and because he notices mercury deposits on Maggie's boot. Looking over reports from Japan, he learns that methyl mercury is used as a de-slimer for logs and caused the deaths of over 100,000 people. It's too heavy for purity tests as it just sinks to the bottom, which is why Isely was so willing to let Verne test the water. The chemical is also described as a mutagen that corrupts chromosomes, which is why we're beginning to see some big animals with big brain damage. Maggie gets concerned after eating all of that tasty salmon, but still doesn't tell her husband that she may give birth to a mutant fish baby. Meanwhile, Travis and his family have set up a camp in the woods for the night when suddenly set upon by the angry Katahdin. It rips through all three off screen except for the son, who we see get backhanded into a rock and explode like a chicken. The next day, Verne determines to take blood tests from the Opis when Isely shows up with the sheriff to arrest John. They blame him for murdering the family, so he socks Kelso in the face and runs away, which looks great for his innocence. Ramona waits till the rest leave, then directs Verne and Maggie via helicopter to where John will be hiding. Upon arriving, Verne discovers claw marks on a tree that Ramona says is from a bear, but upon seeing how high they go, she's like, nope, no bear. John meets up with them as the chopper pilot Huntoon lets Maggie out just for her glorified tissue to blow away. It leads her to the grisly sight of 2 mutated bear cubs trapped in a salmon poacher's net. One of them is still alive, so Ramona suggests killing it, but Verne keeps it alive as it's evidence that her husband is innocent. Unfortunately, Huntoon says there's no way they're flying out of here in this weather, so they make for Hector's place where a few Opies are waiting. Verne sets up a table in a teepee where they swaddle the mutated evidence above boiling water to keep it warm. They send Opies to retrieve the sheriff while Maggie gets distressed by the horrifying sounds this cub is making. Verne takes her aside to assure her it'll be okay, but Maggie says not if their baby's anything like the cub. She reveals that she's pregnant and ate the contaminated fish when the sheriff arrives with Isely, so we put that on hold. John hides in an underground storeroom while Verne shows off the mutant cub and is like, look what your paper mill has caused. Isely realizes that the Opies are innocent of the murders, but the bear cub's horrendous sound has alerted the mother to its location. We get a fake out with Hector in his fur coat, then get the real scare as Katahdin comes barreling out of the woods. Kelso is the first to die when the bear knocks him over along with a fuel tank and somehow burns him alive. It also blows up their only vehicle, so everyone funnels into John's hiding spot, including the badly wounded pilot who was attacked by Mom. They wait until everything up top goes quiet, then the sheriff goes to check if the coast is clear but is immediately killed. Unable to retrieve the crying cub, the mother just picks up the dead one and walks away, leaving Hector completely unharmed, probably because of his sweet coat. When the storm passes, the helicopter is no longer an option as Huntoon's unconscious and needs to be carried on a stretcher. The group carry him to a nearby settlement while Isely volunteers to walk 7 miles on his own to an old communication tower. We cut between the two parties traversing through man-made clearings as Isely heads up the mountain to call for help. Just before he reaches the tower, he comes across the remains of the dead cub that the mother took from the attack. Suddenly Katahdin is hot on his hiney and chases Isely the rest of the way to the radio shack, but the front gate's locked. Unable to climb it, he tries to slide under, but the undead Ursa kills him, so no help is coming for the rest of them. As they make it to the settlement with the injured pilot, they find it completely abandoned as these locals ain't no dummies. Hector sings a protection prayer or something while John goes off to search a nearby clearing and finds an abandoned truck. The group discuss if they should hold up there for the night, but Huntoon's dying, so they risk driving to town in the dark. It isn't long, however, before Katie emerges and turns the truck over, so everyone is forced to flee into the forest on foot. The mother kills Huntoon and chases the group into the river where they swim across to the cabin. Maggie had the cub latch onto her neck in the truck and it's been hanging off it ever since, even as she swims. So Verne puts his wife before his work for the first time in his life and drowns Winnie the Pooh in the river. The group reaches the other side minus Hector, who confronts Katahdin, and that goes about as well as you'd expect. He's ragdolled to death before Katie begins to make her way across underwater, but the group believe it drowns for some reason. Today they learn that bears can swim as she emerges from the drink and chases the survivors into the flimsy cabin. As they barricade the door and windows, Verne finds an old Winchester that better pack a punch because he's only got 2 bullets. It actually does, as Katahdin rips a hole through the roof, but it only takes a single shot for the beast to fall back. However, Mother returns bursting through the wall, knocking out both girls and taking the remaining bullet like a champ. John shoots it with arrows as they run outside, but the bear's only in it for revenge at this point and kills him with a wicked slap. Verne has no clue how to use a bow, so when Katie picks him up, he just uses the arrow to stab her in the eyeball repeatedly. Covered in blood and now completely blind, the weakened bear drops Verne and collapses backwards into the river. The doctor then does an irregular style leap onto the bear before stabbing it repeatedly with the arrow. It finally dies and sinks underwater before a rather abrupt cut to show Verne and Maggie on board a plane. We're left to speculate about their child and if Ramona survived, while a father is shown searching for his cubs. And the movie ends.